The Hermetic Principle of Gender, Creative Polarity in Nature and Being. The Hermetic Principle of Gender is one of the 7 foundational axioms of Hermetic philosophy, traditionally summarized in the phrase, "Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes." Though often misread through the lens of modern socio-political categories, this principle does not describe socio-cultural roles or identities, nor does it declare a division between male and female. Rather, it reveals a deeper law, that creative polarity, manifest as masculine and feminine forces, is the fundamental dynamic through which all generative processes arise. In this light, gender is not a constraint, but a key. It is the schema through which the universe initiates, gestates, and manifests. From the shaping of an idea in the human mind to the genesis of stars and organisms, the interplay of polar forces underlies all actualization. The principle is therefore not an ideology. It is a map of becoming, drawn from the careful observation of nature herself. The masculine and feminine, in Hermeticism, are not adversaries or separate beings, but complementary attributes of a unified creative process. The masculine corresponds to the initiating, projective, and directive impulse, a movement toward expression. The feminine corresponds to the receptive, containing, and integrative field, the matrix in which expression takes form. These are not abstract metaphors imposed on the world, they are archetypal functions discernible in the very biology of life and the patterns of matter. At their most essential, these principles do not refer to men and women, but to polar modes of activity observable across mental, physical, and spiritual planes. To fully grasp the Hermetic understanding of gender, one must study where these polarities originate most visibly, in the living processes of biological generation. In biological reproduction, the masculine principle is embodied in the gametic and behavioral patterns of the spermatozoon and the male organism. The sperm is highly mobile, directionally driven, and minimal in its structural composition. It does not sustain, gestate, or nourish. Instead, it seeks, asserts, and aims to reach, carrying with it only the essence required to initiate a new process. It must overcome resistance, compete with others, and succeed not through maintenance, but through penetration. This is the archetype of directed will, condensed into a living form. Male behavior in many species mirrors this role. Males engage in displays, competition, and rituals of assertion, not to build ecosystems or maintain harmony, but to initiate a singular transformative act. Biologically, the masculine impulse is not oriented towards structure, but ignition. Hormonal correlates such as testosterone reinforce this projective behavior, fueling drive, assertiveness, exploration, and goal orientation. These are not arbitrary traits, but expressions of the initiating polarity, compact, mobile, and seeking realization through outward force. The feminine principle, by contrast, is exemplified in the ovum, large, nutrient-rich, and stationary. Unlike the sperm, it does not seek, it waits, but it does not wait passively, it prepares. It cultivates the conditions under which a single successful act of fertilization may become a world. It is highly selective, chemically and structurally defensive, and imbued with the developmental machinery necessary for transformation. It is not just receptive, it is active in discernment. Once fertilization occurs, the feminine role expands into gestation, the slow, deliberate building of form. Through hormonal regulation, metabolic synchronization, and physiological containment, the female organism ensures that the potential initiated by the masculine becomes an actuality. The womb is not only a biological structure, it is the hermetic vessel, the alchemical retort in which transformation occurs. Estrogen and progesterone orchestrate this long arc of becoming, modulating cycles, integration, emotional bonding, and temporal rhythm. This is the domain of form-giving time, not explosive direction. Together, these principles do not add, they interact. When the sperm and egg unite, they do not simply merge, they generate a new ontological state. The zygote is not reducible to either parent. It is an emergent, autonomous entity with its own regulatory functions, developmental trajectory, and teleological arc. In this, the Hermetic third is revealed, the interactive production, the child, the idea, the outcome, not merely a combination, but a synthesis that transcends its parts. This pattern is repeated across all levels of manifestation. On the mental plane, Thought acts as the directive masculine force. It initiates inquiry, posits possibilities, penetrates mystery. But it is imagination that holds and shapes the image, the matrix in which thought can take on meaning. The resulting idea, the mental offspring, is neither pure thought nor pure imagination, but a realized form that opens further pathways. On the spiritual plane, divine will initiates, but divine wisdom sustains. Their union brings forth creation, not as a mechanical output, but as an emergent harmony, a living cosmos. The principle of gender is thus not confined to biology, it is revealed by biology. It teaches that nothing is created by assertion alone, nor by receptivity alone. The creative act is always a triadic movement: initiation, integration, and manifestation. The masculine directs, the feminine forms, and from their dynamic tension, something wholly new arises. This structure holds in atoms and galaxies, in thoughts and civilizations. In human life, each individual contains both principles. The mind must project and receive. The soul must both seek and yield. To be generative, whether intellectually, spiritually, or materially, is to integrate polarity. The imbalance of these forces leads not only to dysfunction in the outer world, but to fragmentation of the inner self. Hermetic teachings do not reify gender roles, but call for their transcendence through understanding. The alchemist does not become masculine or feminine. They become androgynous in spirit, capable of invoking both principles in harmony. The ultimate goal is not polarity itself, but its integration. The great work is the marriage of opposites, the synthesis of force and form into conscious creation. The Hermetic Principle of Gender, when understood through both philosophical insight and biological observation, reveals itself as a law of becoming, embedded in life, yet extending beyond it. It affirms that creation arises not from sameness nor from conflict, but from the dance of opposites, a sacred polarity that is both natural and divine. To know this principle is not merely to name it, it is to see it at work in everything. The seed and the soil, the word and the ear, the artist and the canvas, all are echoes of that primal polarity, and where the two come into union, something new, unpredictable, and alive emerges. That is the principle of gender, not a division of kinds, but the revelation of a pattern, the way in which the one becomes many, and the many return to the one through the mystery of generation.